What is going on, guys? I am back today to talk about a movie that honestly, I cannot believe it has taken me this long to watch this movie because, as many of you know, recently I released a video talking about my favorite directors. And one of my favorite directors and writers of all time is Charlie Kaufman. And I love Charlie Kaufman. I think his directorial body of work is phenomenal, and he's also a really talented writer. And this film is directed by Spike Jonze, who, in my opinion, is also an incredible director who doesn't have a super long run of directorial features, but the films that he has directed, including this film being John Malkovich, Where the Wild Things Are, and Her, are all fantastic films. And he's a very talented director, and this was the only film of his I haven't seen, and one of the Charlie Kaufman written films that I had not watched, and I was very excited to visit this for the first time. And the movie I'm going to be discussing today is Adaptation. Adaptation is directed by Spike Jonze. A lovelorn screenwriter grows increasingly desperate in his quest to adapt the book The Orchid Thief. So I didn't even realize when I went into this movie that Nicolas Cage was playing Charlie Kaufman, but that made me very excited when I watched this movie, and I thought this movie was incredible. I think alongside everything else Charlie Kaufman has worked on his career, this is a brilliant, thought-provoking, meta, dramatic, hilarious film that covers a lot of ground in about a 2-hour runtime, but none of the ground that it covers feels like it's not sat with enough. I feel like every single theme that Charlie Kaufman is exploring in his script and that Spike Jonze is directing here gets enough time to breathe on screen that where all of it hits really hard. So as the plot description states, we're introduced to Charlie Kaufman, played by Nicolas Cage, and he's a down-on-his-luck screenwriter that's currently working on Being John Malkovich, which is super meta. And while he's working on Being John Malkovich and it's being shot, he's working with Tilda Swinton, of all people. Tilda Swinton's playing a character that wants him to adapt this book about orchids into a full-length feature film, and so he takes the job. And then we are introduced to the plot arc of what is going on in the book. The woman who is writing the book is played by Meryl Streep, and the man who is the subject of the book, John LaRoche, is played by Chris Cooper. And she's investigating this man who is on the search for these orchids, and his wife had passed away. They had a greenhouse together. The greenhouse was destroyed shortly after she passed away, and he dedicated his entire life to finding these orchids, and she goes to investigate his life. She becomes incredibly fascinated with him as a person because he has this passion, and she starts to examine her own life, and we get that story playing out, which seemingly could be seen as a story being constructed in Charlie Kaufman's mind as he is trying to construct the screenplay to this movie, while at the same time we're introduced to Charlie Kaufman's brother Donald, who is also played by Nicolas Cage, who is trying to write a screenplay of his own of this silly thriller concept that Charlie Kaufman thinks is the stupidest thing in the world, but helps him kind of offhandedly with it as well. And while his brother's working on that, his screenplay gets very successful, and Charlie can't write his own screenplay while he's watching his brother succeed. So you have all of these different elements mingling together at the same time to create a really immersive, thought-provoking, surreal film that really emotionally moved me a lot. I think what this film explores more than anything else, and it does so brilliantly, is the idea of having a purpose and wanting something with your life. And what is that purpose? Why do we as human beings focus on one thing? And why does that one thing bring us joy? And that's through so many different things, whether that be Charlie Kaufman's character successfully writing a script, whether that be Chris Cooper's character finding an orchid, whether that be Meryl Streep's character finding joy in writing about this and grabbing a hold of one thing and finding some kind of joy in that one thing. And I think that parallels really heavy to Charlie Kaufman's Synecdoche, New York, and even elements of Charlie Kaufman's book Antkind, where it seems like Charlie is really fascinated with this idea of why we're here. Why do we as human beings exist? What gives us purpose? Even his film Anomalisa really covers that subject matter as well. And I think it is interesting because, so many people are obsessed with this concept of happiness. And like people think that happiness is a state of being. I might be a sadist in saying this, but I don't think that happiness is necessarily a state of being. I think happiness is a moment. I think happiness is periods of your life where you can find joy and you find things to grab a hold onto. And as human beings, we work towards finding that joy, right? It's not going to exist all the time because life is hard. Life can be shit sometimes. And we're constantly going to have things thrown at us. And I think what Charlie Kaufman examines in this film is that shit hits the fan a lot, and oftentimes we can't control it. Even in Chris Cooper's character, there's a really beautiful scene about what happened to his wife and his family, and it really kind of shows that no matter what happens in life and no matter how good things are getting, that something bad can happen. And something in the film happens later on to Charlie Kaufman and his brother's character, and it just goes to show, we never really know what's going to happen. We don't know what's around the corner. But finding moments of joy in the little things is the best thing that we can do. And I think the way Kaufman portrays that in this script and the way Spike Jonze directs this material makes it resonate really beautifully. And aside from that, I think that this film is about creative passion and spark and how difficult it can be for creators to make something that resonates with an audience exactly in the way that they want to. One of the things Charlie Kaufman has been scrutinized for in his entire career is how heady and psychological a lot of his films are. And I remember when I took screenwriting in college, the first thing the screenwriter told us all is that you cannot write in a screenplay something that goes on in a character's head, because an audience can't see what's going on in a character's head. You have to be able to show it. Show, don't tell is the biggest part of screenwriting. And this movie covers that a lot in a lot of different conversations. And I thought it was really interesting to get inside of Charlie Kaufman's head, especially through a lot of voiceover narration moments, as to what goes on in his mind, as to how things that he wants to convey and how he wants to convey it, but how it doesn't necessarily work through the filmmaking medium. And I thought that was really fascinating because his movies are oftentimes able to accomplish things that I didn't even personally think were able to be accomplished in a film just by seeing it. I think that the way he looks at the human experience is unlike a lot of directors and writers out there. And I think working with Spike Jonze being someone who also understands the human condition in a way that I think is really unique and special, this movie is able to bring out a lot of emotion in you. And I think that covering those that wide array of material in a 2-hour runtime makes for a really emotionally impactful experience. Aside from that, there's some really comical moments in this that are very over the top. There's a lot of humor about being in that industry that I think even if you're not in the industry or don't necessarily understand all the inner workings of it, there's enough there for you to grab a hold onto that you'll find something to appreciate. And it's really just a performance-driven masterpiece. Nicolas Cage in this just continues to prove that he is one of the greatest actors of all time, in my opinion. And I know people give him a lot of shit for the movies that he's made that aren't good, but he's made some truly remarkable pieces of art that he's so committed and incredible in his performances. And in this movie, it's no exception, especially playing two characters. Meryl Streep, phenomenal as always. Chris Cooper is really a standout in this. I think he was nominated and possibly won the Academy Award for this role, which I 100% understand. He's phenomenal in this thing. Everyone that shows up in this is great, but Spike Jonze has proven as a director that he can get the best out of his actors through his very limited directorial feature films that he's made. He's gotten some amazing performances out of his people, and this is a movie that I'm going to be thinking about for quite some time. And I dived a little bit into the subject matter that this film covers, but it covers an even wider array that I haven't jumped into. It's a film that quickly made one of my favorite films of all time lists. I can see myself revisiting this thing 100 times and never getting sick of it. And yeah, I would wholeheartedly recommend this film if you're a fan of filmmaking, if you're a fan of surreal or abstract comedies that will leave you thinking afterwards. That is 100% what Adaptation is. and I'd highly recommend checking this movie out. So have you seen Adaptation? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was absolutely brilliant in every way, and I cannot wait to revisit it sometime in the future. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, it helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.